Hi, welcome to today's video. My name is Paul. So this week I wanted to look at the idea of painting and drawing in a loose style. There are a lot of videos, blog posts out there on this topic, so I guess it's something that people are interested in. Over the last maybe 3 weeks, I have taken a look at some of these videos. Not all of them, there are thousands of them, but I've taken a look at a few of them and also read a few blog posts. So in this video, I'm going to sum up some of the ideas that I found in those videos and blog posts, and also add in one of my own ideas for what it's worth. Before we get too deep into it though, maybe try to clarify what this idea of loose painting style means, at least from my point of view. Not because my point of view is correct or better or anything like that, but since I'm the one doing the talking in the video, it might be useful to understand what I mean when I say a loose drawing style. At least then we're all on the same page. On screen you can see two pieces of art. On the left is a drawing by Paul Cadden, the artist Paul Cadden. And on the right is one of my, let's call them artistic scribbles. Even if we don't agree on terminology, I think we can agree that these two pieces of art are quite different styles. On the right, my version, I would describe this as a loose approach, whereas the one on the left is definitely not a loose approach to drawing or painting. This sort of photorealism is the complete opposite, I think, of the whole loose approach to drawing and painting. So what are the differences? Well, one difference is obviously details. The photorealist approach is very detail oriented. Details are very important. Whereas in the loose approach, it focuses on big shapes. So you're communicating something with the viewer via these big shapes rather than details. You can include details, but they're not as important as the photorealist sort of tight style of drawing, if you like. The whole general approach is also different. Some adjectives I might use with a loose approach could include careless, sloppy, fast, spontaneous, creative, imaginative. Whereas with the tight photorealist style, you might use sort of the opposite then. You would have sort of slow, painstaking, careful, methodical, planned out. But it also lacks any sort of spontaneity. It lacks creativity. It lacks imagination. In fact, I would go as far as to say is that photorealist style has no imagination and no creativity. It's a much more technical approach to making art. Really, the photorealist style, that sort of naturalistic style of painting and drawing, especially with photorealism, you're taking a photograph, that's your starting point, and you're sort of mechanically, technically reproducing that as a drawing or a painting in every little detail. So it doesn't require imagination, doesn't require spontaneity, and there's no creativity because you're just mechanically, technically transferring one image to another medium, whether it's pencil drawing or painting or whatever. The loose style, on the other hand, puts all the emphasis on the spontaneity and the creativity and the imagination. And in my case, I don't use any references, it's pure imagination. So there's the difference in approaches. Now, all of these videos and blog posts that I watched and read, as I say, they were sort of aimed, I think the target audience were people who wanted to paint in a looser way, but were maybe struggling for some reason. So these videos and blog posts were trying to offer some advice that might help people achieve that goal. And the advice tended to fall into two categories, two sort of broad categories. Category 1 is the technical stuff. So they'll say things like, use a big brush, use confident strokes, be creative, be imaginative, stand back from the canvas, stand back from the piece of paper, use your whole arm to get the movements and the brush strokes rather than fingers and wrists. Focus on the big shapes rather than all the little details. I don't disagree with any of that. I think it's all perfectly valid advice. Whether or not that's enough advice to help someone to paint in a loose style is debatable, but I don't disagree with the advice as such. The second category then is different. Rather than focusing on the technical stuff and the techniques, it's looking at the more psychological side of making art. So these videos and blog posts, they claim that some people struggle to paint and draw in a loose style because they're worried about how other people will react to this style of art. If we go back to the beginning, those two pieces of art that I showed at the beginning of the video, if you had those two pieces of art printed out in your hands and you went out into the street and stopped passers-by and asked them for their opinions on the two pieces of art, I don't know what you're going to get, but I imagine the majority of people will probably prefer the photorealist style, especially once they realize that it's not a photograph, it's a drawing, because they'll recognize and they'll appreciate the patience, the skill, the technical skills that go into making that piece of art. Whereas my sort of artistic scribble, they'll look at it and they'll think, well, it doesn't require any skills whatsoever, because they're thinking just in terms of drawing skills and technical skills, probably. So they'll look at it and think, well, no, I don't like that. It's my 5-year-old could do that. So you will get, and I'm speaking from experience, you will get more negative comments when you do paint and draw in a loose style. Some people are not shy about giving their thoughts on these things. So that will possibly have a negative impact on some people who want to paint in this style but are maybe worried then about how their art will be received. I don't know if that's the case or not. I don't have any evidence one way or the other, but I guess it's a possibility. And the only advice I can give is you have to make art for yourself and not care what other people think about your art. Making art for some kind of validation is maybe not the best way to make art. I know as artists we want to connect with people, and we want that to be a positive connection if possible. We want people to like our art, but it's a dangerous road to go down, because then you're sort of making art for other people. And I think as an artist you have to make art for yourself, really. I'll say if they like it, that's great. If they don't, well, that's okay, whatever. That's the only advice I can give about that sort of psychological side of painting and drawing in a loose way. I think, so as I say, I don't disagree with any of those categories, any of that sort of advice, but I think there's maybe also a third thing, at least a third thing, there may be others, and that's personality. So I wonder how much your personality influences your style of art. If you're a careful, methodical sort of person, if you like to have a plan, you like to, when you get your art supplies, you like to set out the colors in some sort of order. You like everything to be neat and tidy and planned. If you're that kind of person, maybe I would suggest that painting in a loose style may be more of a challenge for you. I'm not saying it's the wrong way to paint for you, but I am saying that that approach to art might make it more of a struggle for you. Whereas if you're like me and you're sort of careless and sloppy and just grab some stuff and start slapping it onto the paper and see what happens. That approach is more suited perhaps to a loose style of painting. As I say, some adjectives with the loose style would be, in my opinion, careless and sloppy, but also spontaneous and creative and imaginative. So if you like to use your imagination rather than trying to use reference photographs, painting in a loose style might be easier for you, because you're just going to focus on big details. There are no or big shapes. You're not going to focus in on little details because it's just an idea in your head. It doesn't have all the little details. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I think personality does come into it in some way, but I wouldn't disregard the first two bits of advice, sort of, the psychological stuff and the technical stuff. I think those are valid ideas as well. Anyway, that's my opinions on this painting in a loose style. It's not impossible, but it is going to be more difficult for some people, I think. And also, it is not the only way to paint. Painting in the more technical, the tight sort of approach is also an equally valid, and in some people's opinions, a more valid way of painting than the loose style. There is no right or wrong in art. There's just different opinions and different approaches, and they're all valid in my opinion. Although, of course, I have preferences. I prefer the looser style. On screen you can see 6 somewhat recent landscapes. They're all done in a loose style. The top left is done in acrylic. There's a few watercolors in there and a few dry media, charcoal. I have put together a little booklet, a virtual booklet. It's not a physical booklet, a PDF file, which I've made available on my Patreon shop, and it includes about 60 or 70 drawings and paintings over the last couple of years. If anybody's interested, it might be useful from a point of view of inspiration, or if you're looking for something, if you're getting started and you're looking for something to copy, and then later on something, the inspiration to develop your own style, it might be useful. It's there, it's available. I've tried to keep the price as low as possible. It's about £3 or $5 give or take. There may be some taxes added on. Of course, I don't have any control over that. But as I say, it's available. Anybody who would like it, it's available on Patreon. Okay, well, that's the end of the commercial part of the video. If you made it this far, thank you for watching and listening, and hopefully see you again in next week's video.